Hey, I'm Joel Cheesman of the Chad and Cheese podcast, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Chad Sowash.
Well, hello.
Also joined by Gerry Crispin, recruiting soothsayer and sightseer. I threw that
Good
in there,
Lord.
and founder of Career Xroads. Deb Andrychuk,
title.
industry veteran and VP of Recruitment, Branding Goodness over at Shaker Recruitment Marketing, and
Right.
proud sponsor of the Chad and Cheese podcast.
That's
I
right.
might add.
Travel sponsor.
And last and least, Stephen Rothberg, president and founder, College Recruiter. Welcome, everybody, to the Chad and Cheese podcast,
Thank you.
HR's most dangerous podcast, by the way.
I'm scared.
Well, let's dive right into it. We're going to talk about grad hiring on this episode. So I'm going to send this out to Deb. Deb, this one's for you. How are employers protecting their brands and talent pipelines by adapting their new grad hiring programs?
So we are seeing, I'm actually really excited to see this, that companies are very, very keyed into the fact that they know they need to do the right thing. They are, to Gerry's point in an earlier session, we were talking about how, if you are making offers, you can't rescind. The majority of our clients are keeping the folks that they have made offers to. In the internship program, same thing. And then they're just pivoting and they're making sure that they're able to provide, meaningful content via online. I think that's the toughest thing that these clients have had to do is, take whatever they typically train for and turn that into online curriculum. That's not simple to do. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but we all know that, the whole Zoom fatigue, it's a real thing. Trying to really pay attention every minute because, people can see you. You're trying to look for the verbal and facial, all those cues that you don't get when you're not sitting across the table from someone. All of that really taxes you. Sure. As an individual. So I think, they're trying to throw in some fun, and then they're also trying to make sure that in lieu of, the water cooler talk and being able to hang out with people that you would have worked with, like right next to them, they're trying to make sure that you get some semblance of that. And so they're doing the HR happy hours, but we're also seeing where there are executive sponsors who are spending, an hour on a, video chat with new grads or with interns and having those conversations and keeping it a little lighthearted, making sure that it's a little more casual because they really want to try to humanize the entire experience instead of feeling, very robotic.
Chad, wasn't you that sent the link of companies hiring magicians and comedians to come in on Zoom calls?
Yeah.
Cool.
And there's Goat to Meeting as well, where they actually bring live animals and llamas, and it's a thing. It's the whole entertainment section.
And on a more serious note,
we've all seen each other's dogs and cats far more than we want to. Also, right?
Yeah.
Well, dogs. You can always see more dogs. Cats, not so much.
And on a serious note, Chad, you and I interviewed Chipotle a few weeks ago, and they're making some really interesting inroads with mental health benefits, as well as expanding healthcare, protecting workers, serving food much better, creating 6 feet distances between customers. So we're really seeing a lot of different variances of how companies are reacting to make sure that internships and any employee feels safe. Are you guys seeing anything else from companies?
I think it's all over the map. All over the map. The thing that I try and do, which I can't do very well, is to put myself in the shoes of some of these kids who are graduating. And it's hard. It's been a while for actually everybody on this call, and 50 years for me. So but I do happen to go back and talk to kids at college on a regular basis, and most of them are truly invested in this full-time job. They're invested from an ego point of view, invested maybe in a year or 2 years as an intern. They've gotten to know and build a relationship with kids who are also going to that company. Their parents are proud of them. You know, they finally are getting them out of the house, maybe. So there's this incredible kind of activity that's going on. And now we have COVID. And so the whole issue is, I'm frightened. What does that mean for me? And I think we talked about the fact that communication now becomes really critical. The kind of the way in which we now are communicating with those students about what our thinking is, even before we make the decision as to whether or not we're going to rescind or not rescind, et cetera. So they get excited when we've decided not to rescind, but maybe it's going to be a delay for 2 or 3 months, maybe a delay for even longer. Maybe there are reduced issues in terms of how I'm going to be onboarded and the kind of projects I'm going to be involved in, and that might impact my pay. Or maybe I can show that there's some benefits that I can give you while I'm delaying. So companies are coming up with more and more innovative ways. The key is that the company cares about doing this well, more so than I've ever seen. I remember the most recent 2008 variation in which lots of companies were automatically rescinding their offers, and then suddenly the media was giving them such a hard time, they suddenly decided, well, maybe we don't rescind everything, or maybe we just delay, or maybe we do something else. So they were playing catch up because they made bad decisions too quickly. Now they're making better decisions, but it takes time to make those decisions. And what they're doing when they're doing it really well is keeping the kids involved in the course of that time frame, and the best of them are even engaging the parents of those kids as well.
One of the ideas that's sort of gaining traction is this idea of hazard pay. And I know we talked about internship pay in a previous episode, but it seems to me if you're an essential worker, and that's not just healthcare, but any job where you're in harm's way of this virus,
sure,
that at least government's starting to talk about hazard pay, and some companies are doing it. Is that something you see getting traction? Is it something that you're seeing in the marketplace? What are your general thoughts on hazard pay for internships?
I don't see that happening too much for interns and or early hires. I see it much more in the hourly apprenticeship kind of thing. So if you're a laundry worker in a hospital, I got to tell you, I would be looking for some serious hazard pay for that job. And I'm aware of the fact that almost half of all the people who are offered that job don't show up. And a good portion of those who do show up leave on the first day. Yeah. Because that's not going to, you need that kind of hazard pay for those kinds of things. And the pay and the job and the future of somebody in that job is way different than that of an intern who or early hire who proves himself or herself, and the experience that they have and the skills they're going to be able to develop and fine tune in a crisis situation are probably going to serve them really well from a successful point of view for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah. So one thing that these 21, 22-year-old grads are going through is that a lot of them feel like punching bags. That at some of their earliest memories were the start this country going to war. And that just sort of as they became aware that the world was more than just them and their mommy and daddy, we were already at war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So they've never known a time where we weren't at war. Another early memory for these 21, 22-year-olds is the 2008-2009 recession, where a lot of them saw their parents or maybe older siblings, cousins, uncles, aunts lose their jobs. some of them becoming homeless or having to leave their homes, being foreclosed on. And now 12 years later, 11 years later, here we are again. And it sort of feels to a lot of them like they've lurched from one massive crisis to another. I'm a Gen Xer. We didn't have any of this shit.
Bullshit.
We just didn't.
What are you talking about?
We had some, but we didn't have anything like the
Soviets,
08-09 recession.
AIDS,
drugs.
But
that wasn't an existential threat facing all of society and turning it upside down in the course of weeks or months. It just paled in comparison. Yeah, we had the Soviets and we knew that we could be incinerated in a moment, but that was something that we lived with for our whole lives.
Were you in Canada at the time? Is that what the problem is?
I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
Well, and it's true. I mean, Canadians certainly would understand that if the U.S. were to get nuked, then Canada's not that far behind. But this generation has gone from one massive crisis to another far more than the generations before it, millennials or Gen Xers. And another thing that I think we need to keep in mind is that a typical 21, 22-year-old would rather be just about anywhere else than a spare bedroom in their parents' home. And when they are completing their senior year, have to leave school, probably go back to their parents' home, maybe complete their classes online, don't have a graduation, and then can't go to their job of choice in May or June, and maybe have that deferred. Like when I graduated, and if my employer had said, hey, we want to defer your start date by 3 months, I would have been doing cartwheels if I was physically ever capable of doing them. That would have been great. Shit, yeah, I'll go travel for 3 months. I'll do this, I'll do that. Now what are they going to do? Watch Netflix? So I think that they're impatient to start. They want to get the rest of their life underway. They don't remember a time when they weren't in school, and now they're on the cusp of joining the real world. And I
quote the great Billy Joel, who said, "The world's been burning since the world's been turning." Deb, I got a question for you on the marketing side and branding side of the house. Are you seeing companies want to build a brand, a profile page, career site with, masks and how we're protecting our employees and gloves? Stephen, are you seeing profile pages? And if we're not, should we? And when will we, if we do?
Wow, that's a great question. So we actually are getting requests from clients to go in and, update their pages, LinkedIn profiles, Glassdoor profiles, help them build out, quick turn microsites that are COVID related. So we just did one for Lowe's that launched. I think we did it in less than a week. No pressure there at all. Yeah. But I think what's been really cool to see is that these bigger clients, they really get that they need to address it in some fashion. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you need to have the messaging out there. And I think too, the other thing is that I've loved the community spirit and the way that these companies have come together, where if you are a company that's furloughing and laying off, like one of our clients is Hilton, and they laid off thousands and thousands of people. And I thought it was so cool that they partnered immediately, with some of the essential employers that are out there. They're partnered up with CVS, for example, and also Lowe's. And I think just the fact that these companies are willing to work together, I don't know. To me, that smells of change, and that makes me happy.
That's actually a pretty big deal.
I agree. It is a big deal. And we talked about it on the show, Hilton, and what CVS actually did. That I think the whole experience for somebody obviously losing their job in a crisis, and most of these individuals, that's a need income, right? And they're going to remember that Hilton helped them out, but they're also going to remember that CVS welcomed them with open arms. You go to that landing page and there's a letter from, Jeff Lackey saying, hey, welcome. We need people like you to be able to operate. Why has it taken us to be in a crisis to be able to work like this? Because AT&T can't hire all the people that are actually going into their applicant tracking system. They go into a black hole or wherever they go. Why couldn't they work with Verizon to be able to ensure that these people are getting placed? I understand talent and top talent, but holy hell, you have all this overflow of people. We have to wait till we're in a crisis before we can work with other companies. I don't understand.
And would it stick?
What's that?
And would that stick? Because my
Yeah.
guess is once things go back to fair normalcy, that we go back to being the American way and sticking it to the competition.
Well, I think it's one thing for Hilton to refer its employees to CVS. First of all, over the top awesome for both organizations. Doing the right thing for their organizations, doing the right thing for their people. Chad, you said that, those employees will always remember that. They will always remember that, plus the 200 people that they know well, each of those. I mean, that story of how Hilton took care of me and how CVS welcomed me with open arms, that is going to be retold over and over and over again. That's going to be Thanksgiving dinner conversation for years. And I mean, whoever it was that came up with that idea, they should have a monument to that person. It's just tremendous.
Actually, we have the story of it. So
yeah. And
you'll see a piece of that.
Yeah. But to say that Verizon should partner with AT&T, a direct competitor, that seems a step too far to me. First of all,
so
and if the Canadian says that, it's
there were examples of this years ago, by the way.
Don't forget, I moved to the U.S. I was, but if you're, if the candidate applied to AT&T and for whatever reason was rejected, they're going to have a scarlet letter on them when they go over to Verizon. Verizon's going to be like, oh, well, they're not good enough to work for AT&T. Are they good enough? Why would we want to hire them? And that's probably not fair, but I think it's just going to be part of human nature that we don't want the secondhand goods. I think it's really different where if you were a guest services manager and now you're going to be going over to a CVS and you're going to be the store manager, they're not competing. They're very complementary.
Well, there's also one is furloughing and wants them back.
Yeah.
And CVS
Correct.
is surge hiring
Yeah.
and will not need them beyond the surge. So Lackey is happy to tell, Sarah that I will walk them back when the duration is up. And in those kinds of deals, and those two really made the best deal, in part because Lackey was able to break down a lot of stuff in between. But the fact is, Hilton has nearly 50 partners that they go direct with now. Mm-hmm. And CVS has 70 partners. So the reality is there's a lot of job boards that aren't making any money because there's no in between here.
Right.
Oh, there's a lot, Gerry.
There's a lot of interesting stuff in between that isn't in between.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Gerry, because we talked to some of the companies that were surge hiring before some of this stuff became public. And the answer was sort of vaguely, we're not going to need help. And it's like, what are you smoking? You just announced that you need to hire 50,000 people yesterday and you don't need help. It's like, okay, you don't need help from us. Fair enough. You've got another good source. Turns out they did. They had, a hotel partner, a restaurant chain or whatever. And
they had each of these heads of TA been around for 20 plus years. And fundamentally, they know each other at this point. And so when somebody suddenly realizes that in 3 or 4 days, I've got to let go how many people? 50,000, 100,000, or whatever. Holy crap! I need a whole different paradigm for how I'm going to operate.
And where's George
Then
Clooney?
you know what they do? They call people who are like them.
Well,
They
this
call,
framework,
Marriott talks to Hilton, talks to whatever, and
right.
that's how that gets passed on, and that's how it happened this time. Anyway.
Well, and this framework doesn't just have to happen in crisis, because this ebb and flows happens all the time, right?
Not to that level, but
not to this level, but it still happens. And whether it's trickling from here to there or not, it's a much better experience for anybody who's being, furloughed, or they've got to downsize or whatever it is, for that brand, and then being reintroduced to another brand. Because we also have to remember that these individuals and their 200 closest friends buy stuff. Right. And are they going to go to Walgreens? Are they going to go to CVS? Are they going to go to Hilton? Or are they going to go to, the next competitor? That's incredibly important for any of those brands.
Which is why I absolutely believe that the job board model has to elevate itself in being able to offer more than simply the transaction, but also the something more about the relationship movement. And I don't know what that is. I think that's up to them to figure out, but it's going to have to take a new turn. I think there will be a pivot in some of the technology tools out there, because they recognize that we've got to do more than simply have a job that that 100,000 people can apply to and one person gets. It's not going to be sufficient in the future.
Hey, Deb,
employers should be so lucky to get 100,000 people to apply.
Right.
Not maybe
100.
today, but the communication, the marketing for an organization like a Hilton that did such a fantastic job in taking care of its people, when they go on campus next fall or recruit virtually or whatever it is that they're going to do to try to reach those seniors, they're going to have a compelling story to tell.
Oh, yeah.
Right? A lot of employers will say, we take care of our people in good times and in bad.
Yep.
Hilton will actually be able to prove it.
They'll have a video, a full virtual experience by that point.
You almost said virtual reality. Right.
Okay,
there.
I was trying to pull back so you wouldn't get too excited.
Deb, last one from me. We know that our brand is a lot of the times outside of what we say our brand is. And I'm imagining that Glassdoor and Indeed reviews and whatnot are lighting up, so to speak, of companies that are doing poorly with coronavirus and taking care of their employees and things like that. I know you guys track that to some degree. Are you seeing that? And what advice would you give a company who's maybe seeing a spike in negative reviews because of how they're handling the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, we're definitely watching it closely and monitoring it. And, it just depends on industry. And, I would say it does depend on the type of role, but we're seeing it from experienced hires too, where when they're furloughed or laid off, they're ranting on Glassdoor. And I think in defense of some of these companies, it wouldn't matter how they delivered, the message. If you're going to a 17-year, vet in your company and you're saying, hey, today's your last day, pack up your box and go. It doesn't matter how delicately you give that message, they're still going to be upset. And they are going to go to Glassdoor and these pages, and they are going to, leave a review. And it stings. I think the best thing that we can do as employers, and what we have been telling our clients to do, is, make sure that you are doing the best job that you can. Make sure that you are really, digging for every type of alternative before you cut the cord with somebody. But then also spend some time on figuring out, you know, how do we kind of balance out that negative with some positive. And so it's, you know, digging out some of those really positive stories and some of the things that they're doing that would resonate and, you know, carry over and carry them through, I guess.
Well, I'd like to thank Gerry,
Thank
Deb,
you, Gerry. Thank you, Deb.
and Stephen for joining us. Again, this is our Protecting Your Brand series. You can find it on chadcheese.com. Shaker will have it. Gerry will be passing it out at the MCL. And Stephen Rothberg, you know.
The spam machine. Stephen Rothberg.
You know it's going to be on collegerecruiter.com. Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate you spending time with us. And on that, we out.
We out.